Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Awesome C.O.D.Y. As usual, I'm your host, C.O.D.Y, and today we are continuing June's theme of comic book adaptations, future and present, I guess you could say. So, right now, I'm going to have to admit something. I was lazy this weekend and did not watch Sweet Tooth like I said I was going to last week, so I'm changing it up, and I'm going to be talking about Sandman this week, and then I'm going to talk about Sweet Tooth, the new Jeff Lemire Netflix show produced by Robert Downey Jr. and his wife, Deborah, I believe her name is. No, that might be. I'll have to check. It doesn't matter. I'll talk about that next week because I did not get around to watching it. That is my fault. So this week we're going to go to Sandman, the soon-to-be live-action adaptation made by Netflix, along with Neil Gaiman and a couple other people. David S. Goyer is part of it. Alan Heinberg, who I believe was very heavily involved way back. I believe I can't remember all of it, but I know he was very detrimental to getting it to where it's at. He's the showrunner on it. And the producers are Gaiman himself and David S. Goyer. So it's definitely in good hands, I believe. Neil has been fighting for a long time to keep this project going in the right direction. Throughout the 90s, he's been quoted saying he has fought off terrible versions of this of live action movie of the Sandman for a long time, and I think it's finally come to head. And it's funny that it's happening this way where it's at, because somewhere along the line there's probably a set of executives who should probably be getting walking papers because they fucked up hard on this. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And I'll go over the history of it a little bit, and of the show finally being a thing, as well as the cast as I know them. I only know a few of them really well, but they've announced a lot more of the the casting of it. But so basically, throughout the late 90s, the Sandman, if you don't know, debuted in an imprint of DC Comics. It was DC Comics all along, but it was basically its own little world that they were producing it in. It's still on DC. I shouldn't say an imprint, but it was on DC. Technically, it went to an imprint of DC called Vertigo, and then now it's on DC's Black Label. So it went from DC Comics. They're like, hey, this isn't really our Detective Comics world. Let's move this to a subsidiary, or an imprint, as they call them, in 1993, which was Vertigo. And then in 2020, actually, I can't remember when Vertigo, I don't remember when they completely absorbed Vertigo, but in 2020, they announced all the new Sandman stuff that's coming out is going to be on DC Black Label, because they did it right now, currently going on with Lock and Key, which is obviously a partnership between DC and IDW. But there's other stuff like, what was that one called? The new one. I can't remember what it's called right now. We're not talking about the comic book, but that's where it's at on there. So it's been around for years. The book debuted in 1989. And then ran 75 issues between January of 1989 to March of 1996. It was halfway through that is when they moved it to Vertigo, which it lived in for a long time, and they even re-released the trades on Vertigo and many glorious collections, including an absolute version, which I wish I could have gotten when they were out. Anyways, so the the version that we're going to be talking about is the Netflix live action adaptation. So, in the history, like I was talking, this has been attempted to be made for essentially since 1996, when several people basically got thrown in together. Warner Brothers has had failed version of this, not failed versions, failed to start versions of this for a long time. They even so they went with a guy named Roger Avery, who was originally attached to direct it after success of Pulp Fiction. The Pirates of the Caribbean screenwriters Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio were basically given the task of writing it and doing revisions. They basically, I mean, they did a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of different things that came out about it. So throughout the planned history, basically the script they were working on was combining a bunch of story elements from different story arcs, which just would have been a nightmare of a mess. And then it basically bounced around from them. Other people got involved. It just kind of stalled, went back and forth, a bunch of different things. By 2011 or 2001, it was definitely staring it in what they refer to as development hell, which is essentially a place in the business, the entertainment world, where projects which have a huge amount of time and effort put into them, like this did, with multiple people touching it, directors, writers, producers, different people going through and on it, and trying to do something with it. Eventually, in 2001, it just kind of faltered. In a question and answer in 2007 at Comic-Con in San Diego, Gaiman remarked, "I'd rather see no Sandman movie made than a bad Sandman movie." Like I said earlier, he's quoted on saying this a lot. But I feel like the time for a Sandman movie is coming soon. We had someone who was has the same obsession with the source material as Peter Jackson had with Lord of the Rings, or Sam Raimi had with Spider-Man. The same. So basically, that same year, he stated that he could imagine Terry Gilliam as a director for the adaptation, and it would be amazing because Terry Gilliam is phenomenal. He does a tremendous ridiculousness with projects. Later on down the line, 2013 came about. It was said that the movie would be as rich as the Harry Potter universe. David S. Goyer announced in an interview earlier in that December that he would be producing an adaptation of the graphic novel alongside Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Neil Gaiman. Jack Thorne was hired to write the script. In October of 2014, Gaiman clarified that that the film, while the film is not announced with a DC slate by Warner Brothers, it would instead be distributed by Vertigo, and announced that they were going to announce a bunch of films coming out. David Goyer told Deadline Hollywood that the studio is very happy with the film's script. According to Deadline.com, the film was going to be distributed by New Line Cinema, who is they are very big into the comic book world. They did, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they were part of Blade franchise, and I think they weren't Hellboy though, were they? No, I can't remember. Anyways, so they're no strangers to the comic book movie. And then later on, it was said that Joseph Gordon-Levitt had dropped out of the project because he had disagreements with the studio over creative direction of the film. On the 9th of November 2016, it was reported by IO9 that Eric Heiserer, I don't know how to say his name, had turned in his draft of the script and left the film, stating that the film should be an HBO series instead of a movie. Jump forward 4 years, and we are in 2000. Well, actually, jump forward in 3 years from then, and we get to the point where Netflix has finalized a deal with DC Entertainment and Warner Brothers to produce a live-action series based around the property of the Sandman. And it's in that history, there's been some talks around doing it with the popularity of things like Supernatural and a couple other things. Eric Kripke, who is the creator of Supernatural, he was thrown around at being someone who's going to be attached to it, but nothing ever really materialized, I don't believe. And even Gaiman liked that approach and was very excited about it, I guess. But I guess it just never really went past much more of that. So, June of 2019, so essentially 2 years ago now, it was announced that by Netflix that they had come to a deal with Warner Brothers to develop the Sandman into a live-action television series. Alan Heinberg is set to be the showrunner, like I said earlier, with Neil Gaiman and David S. Goyer to serve as executive producers. And Gaiman, I believe, is a consultant on it as well. There's no listing of it here, but I think he's credited as a consultant as well as an executive producer, but I could be wrong about that. But it's with DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Television, and it's going to be on the Netflix. And the reason I said earlier that I can imagine there's some executives that are probably either real big trouble or probably got fired, because the Sandman show, a live-action show, would be a perfect fit for HBO Max. It'd be massive. It would be huge, I believe. If you ever thought you wanted a competitor or like a replacement universe to run with outside of Game of Thrones, the Sandman would have been just the perfect thing. And again, I don't know, this is 2019, which we've heard about HBO Max by then, but it just never came about. I mean, DC had their own thing with their online, which I knew was going to fail because A, it was too expensive, B, they didn't have enough on there, and C, they weren't committing to put more on there, because I know there's licensing rights and all these other things that you have to deal with when it comes to streaming services and other contracts you have with broadcasters and who has your movies. But they really missed the boat with this, because when they announced HBO Max, they announced that they're going to have a bunch of DC stuff on there, a bunch of animated stuff, all the live action stuff. They're moving the TV shows they were making, like Teen Titans and Doom Patrol, over there to HBO Max, and it should have been a perfect home for that, because Sandman takes place in the DC universe. They even tie in to characters like Batman. You have Mr. Miracle is technically in it. Dr. Fate, Arkham is featured in one point. So you could have had a huge world building in there. You could have taken your time making it, just like Netflix was taking their time making it and doing it right. And it could have been huge. And that's why I say some executives somewhere probably should have lost their jobs, because at one point you should have known that you have this property that's been bouncing around for a while. Many people have told you that it should be a television show versus a film. And like I said earlier, many people have tried. They even gone to HBO a few times. Right here, I have in front of me a thing about the film director James Mangold, who did Logan, the movie Logan, R-rated comic book movie, did fantastic because it was very well done. He pitched a series to HBO with Gaiman as a consultant, as an unofficial basis, because they hadn't really had an agreement yet. But it proved to be unsuccessful, which was so insane that way back in 2000, I think 10. I don't remember where that was, but yeah, I think it was 2010, and it just seems like they just don't. They didn't know what to do with it at the time, and obviously they faltered on that, and they lost it on their end. They're still producing it because it's their property, but through Netflix. And Netflix have probably just dumped a shit ton of money on them. Like, hey, we'll be willing to pay for a lot of this is if you want to do it. But they should have put on HBO Max. It would have been fucking huge. As long as they got the right people involved, which I think they have now, but they really, really should have put it on their home network versus having it on over there. But I digress. On to the actual show. So like I said, TV show being produced by Alan Heinberg, Neil Gaiman, and David S. Goyer, and being showrun by Heinberg. It's in the works. They're already filming. The cast that was originally announced were the biggest names. Some of them I didn't know ahead of time. Well, I mean, I knew all of them. I just didn't know I knew all of them. I shouldn't say one of them I didn't recognize the name at all at the time, and that is the actual actor playing Death himself. Or not Death, Dream himself, the Sandman. And that actor's name is Tom, I think it's Sturgeon, I believe that is how you pronounce it. Again, I'm terrible with names, so it might even not be Tom. But he has been in a lot of different things. I don't think of looking at the list of his filmography, he's never had a massive role like this. Even on his meager television runs, he was in the longest role he was ever in. Lasted for a season, it looks like, and something called Sweet Biter. I don't know what that actually is. It's a big city coming of age story. But now he has the main role in the upcoming The Sandman series where he's playing Dream, the Sandman. And nicknamed the Sandman. He's technically never really been the Sandman. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go there. The Sandman's been other people taking up the mantle of the Sandman. But that's essentially his name is part of the eternal beings that are. So if you don't know, I guess I should have gone over this. So the whole story is based around the fact that Morpheus, or Dream as he's known, as by many different names actually, was unwittingly kidnapped, which no one ever goes in willingly, but he was mistakenly kidnapped, I should say, by a lunatic by the name, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but basically he is essentially pulled out of his realm and held captive by a cult of lunatics who believed that they were going after Death, who is Dream's sister, and because of that, they would then live forever and be able to control Death. They fucked up, and they got Dream instead. And Dream is then stuck there, and they don't know what's going on with it. And in the comic book, at least, Dream is imprisoned for something like, I think it's like 50 or 60 years. He never ages. he never dies. He's one of the he lives forever. He's an immortal. But because he's out of his realm, the realm of dreaming, things go awry in the dream world. People get psychotic. They fall into never-ending sleep. They don't dream properly. Dreams escape into the real world. Creatures that you would never want outside of the dreaming find their way through the cracks because he's not there to stop them. And essentially, he breaks free and has to put back together the dreaming, including the items that he's had on himself that have abilities that he uses to control dreams and create dreams, but in hands of other people can be very, very dangerous. And that's essentially the story of him tracking those items down and setting right what has been wronged over those last. I'm sorry, they sped this up. I forgot. There's a description here. It happened over 105 years. So in 1916, he was kidnapped by some occult people in a ritual and held captive for 105 years. And in 2021, he escapes and sets out to restore order to his kingdom of the dreaming. That's the description they have right here. I should have read that to you and explained a little more on that. So it's 105 years in this one. So the people playing this is, like I said, is the character of Dream / Morpheus is Tom Sturridge. Maybe it's Sturridge. It makes more sense now I'm looking at it properly. You have Gwendolyn Christie of Game of Thrones fame, who's actually playing Lucifer. So I should also add to this. This is not the first Neil Gaiman adaptation Netflix has taken on. They bought the rights to Lucifer, the TV show that has Tom. What is his name? Oh my God, it's going to drive me insane. I should look it up, but I'm not going to. But anyways, that show is based on the character Lucifer from the comic book Lucifer. Tom Ellis, that's his name. This version of Lucifer is more attuned to the comic book series than what Tom Ellis's show Lucifer on Fox / Netflix was, and I don't think they're ever going to cross because the iteration that is that Lucifer is a lot different than the incarnation of Lucifer from the show / comic book is. For one thing, he's androgynous, or Lucifer is androgynous. Can't really say he or she. They're gender neutral. Which is one of the reasons Gwendolyn Christie would be a great choice. Two reasons really. One is you could easily switch the look around to make her look more masculine or more feminine very easily, but also her stature is great for that role because Lucifer is supposed to be very large, very tall, very muscular, and has blonde hair. Tom Ellis, on the other hand, is a tall, very fit brunette. Doesn't really fit the same one, but it's okay. I actually like the show Lucifer. That it would be... Neil Gaiman has come out and said that it will be a different version of Lucifer that you see in the show versus in the comic book, versus what Tom Ellis plays in that show. But, I would be okay with them using him in this to link the two worlds, but whatever. You don't have to. I think Gwendolyn Christie was going to make a great Lucifer. Then you have Boyd Holbrook as the I can never say this properly without slowing down. The Corinthian. I want to say something else every time, but it's Corinthian. And he is a nightmare who has escaped the dreaming during the 105 years of Dream's incarceration due to the cult. And the Corinthian when you read the comic book, or if you listen to the audiobook, by which I haven't got to yet, is fantastic as well. There's a very defined look to him. He's easy on the eyes, some would say, but he always wears sunglasses. When he takes them off is really when the nightmare starts, because he has eyes. His eyes are actually mouths, and he eats eyes, which is weird to think about, but I think when they do it, it's going to be great. And I think Boyd Holbrook is a perfect choice to embody the role of the Corinthian, and I cannot wait to see what they do with him, because they're obviously going to have the CG and some his mouth and the mouth eyes, because you can't find an actor that has that. And if you do, I don't think you can hire that person, because that's actually terrifying. So that's pretty cool. And then the only other big name of the original casting that I ever saw is Charles Dance, another HBO tie and another Game of Thrones veteran. He'll be playing Roderick Burgess, who is the I want to say he's the OG cult member that basically started the whole thing, if I'm not mistaken. And then some other people in there too. There's a lot of cool things they're doing with it. There's gender swapping some characters, like the Lucian, who is denoted or shown as being male or masculine in the comic books, and isn't even voiced by a man in the audiobook. But they're gender swapping that, or gender reversed that one, and it's Lucienne, a lady's name, and I don't know this person, and they don't really. I'm looking up different things. I didn't go as far as I are going past IMDb or Wikipedia to find this person, but Vivian, and that last name's gonna kill me. Okjapung? I'm not too sure. I don't know how to say it. I'm terrible with names in general. If it's not John Smith, I'm real bad at it. But you have a lot of different people in there, a lot of different things. One of the big things that caused a big stir is the person playing, which this is what throws me off. People who complain about this don't know the material well enough. And I don't want to get sidetracked because I'm almost done. But so the person I'm talking about, where is it? I can't remember who it was. One of the endless, as they call them, the 7 endless with the brothers and sisters of death. There's several of them that are. It must be. Oh, it's got to be that one. Is it Desire? Mason Alexander Park. I think that's the one. It's Mason Alexander Park is a non-binary actor. I don't know how to say that. Performer, thespian, I should say. I think that's who it is. And people were losing their minds. But the person, the character they're playing is Desire, who is an androgynous sibling of Dream. They're neither male or female, so they are technically non-binary. They don't have their gender and their sex. Doesn't matter, because at one point Dream is even a female in certain iterations, and Lucifer is very androgynous, but is more masculine, does wear suits and stuff like that. It just, I don't know, it was weird. And Neil Gaiman even like fired back at like someone who tweeted at him about it. Like, if you don't know the material, you don't know the material. Like, you have to realize, especially Desire and even Despair. Despair's twin is the twin sister to Desire. They're both very they're very gender fluid. I mean, it's very bizarre to me. And I'm not saying that you like they should or shouldn't have. I think they should have. But also, It could be anybody. I just think having someone who is non-binary playing a character who's non-binary makes more sense because they're going to fit that role better. That's like having a person who's deaf play a deaf person, like in A Quiet Place. Not unlike in The Stand, where they had a normal, a non-handicapped, non-deaf actor playing a deaf character for two reasons. One, in the material, you got to realize in the Sandman or in the Stand, with the Sandman and the Stand, that's funny, that there's parts of it where he's not deaf and a mute. So you can't have a deaf mute actor playing a non-deaf mute person because they can't. So you have an actor who's not handicapped, doesn't have that hindrance, being able to work with someone who can make them a convincing on camera person who has a handicap. And then in this dream sequences when he doesn't have that handicap, he can be not having that handicap, you know what I mean? So having a non-binary actor, thespian, playing a non-binary character just makes sense. So god damn it, when you're saying, when you're firing shots and saying things like, oh, you shouldn't gender swap, you didn't create this material, right? And having someone who's literally only lives in dreams, that technically, I'm not going to go into it, but basically lives in the world of dreaming, in the kingdom of dreaming, they can be whatever gender they want, but also the Endless, they aren't actually ever one sex or the other. And if they are, they can go back and forth. That's all I'm saying. It's I don't know, it just makes me mad that comes up. Anyway, so that's that. Stephen Fry is playing Gilbert, who is a character that shows up later on. Patton Oswalt will be voicing Matthew, who is one of the Raven emissaries for Dream, which is a great choice, by the way. Cain and Abel were cast in this because they're part of the Dreaming, and they got actors who have they're not white. I don't know. I mean, this is listed as there's one of them. I think they're both listed as being British. Well, actually, he's an English comedian. Well, does that mean English? That would mean English, British and English. There or her. But they have, I think they're of Indian descent, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't look it up because I wasn't going to go through all of them, and I've already gone through a lot of it. Sanjeev Bhaskar, I think is how you pronounce his name, is an English comedian, actor, television presenter. He's been a lot of things, but I believe he's of Indian descent. And then his counterpart, and he will be playing, I believe that is, he is Cain, and Abel is being played by Asim Kadare. I don't know how to say this. I'm terrible with names in general, so I'm really sorry about that. But he is a British comedian, writer, director, and actor who's been in a lot of different things in the BBC, apparently, according to his listing of movies and films. But yeah, so that's kind of the thing, is I think they did a good job of casting for sure, from what I know of so far. And I don't know too much about, like I said, Tom Sturridge. I just know that he's playing Dream, and he's obviously a very major role. And there will be parts, I'll warn you, if they go by the story, if they stick really closely to the graphic novel, there's going to be extremely large chunks that don't have Dream in it. They tell stories, and then I just hope they do. This is what I'll say. If you want a slice of what it's going to be like, or if you don't want to read the comic book, which I believe, and I'll check here, I believe it's still on Comixology if you pay for that, if you want to do it. And you can buy it digitally, or if you can find digital copies for sure, but I think you can still get re-release versions of the trades too. I think, yeah, the Sandman is still on there, so you can get it. I downloaded it for two reasons. One is I wanted to look at, when I was getting ready to listen to the audiobook, or audio play, I should really say, I wanted to see if I could guess how far they were going to go, and I needed to verify it. So they do have the Sandman digitally, and I didn't want to go through all my comics and try to find my issues of it. But if you pay for Comixology, or if you want to check it out digitally, you can buy them digitally through Comixology, or if you do Comixology Unlimited, you can get them as a part of the borrowing them through the through that subscription. And I believe they have all. I think they have all of them on there. I'm not too sure. I only downloaded the first three because I was guessing at where they're going to go, and I believe they go through the first three story arcs in the audiobook, which is available through Audible. Came out last July, actually on my birthday, and is fantastic. It's so amazingly voice acted. The casting was fantastic in it. James McAvoy was the voices Dream / Morpheus. You have Taron Egerton, who does Constantine in it. Michael Sheen voices Lucifer, which is a fantastic choice, mainly because he played an angel in another Neil Gaiman project, which is hilarious. You have Kat Denning, who voices Death. Who else is in there? Andy Serkis does a couple different voices. Matthew the Raven, Samantha. Who else does? He does. Actually, it might just be Matthew the Raven. I thought he did Lucian, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I might be wrong about that. I don't have the whole list in front of me. But yeah, they if you want to check that out, it's I don't know how much that one is. I can tell you though right now, but it's super amazing, and I think if you want to check it out, you definitely should give it a fucking shot, because it's amazing. Is this gonna tell me how expensive? Nope. I can't. I don't know how to work websites apparently. Let's see. So, I know it's in my library, but how much is it? It doesn't tell me on here. I wonder if I click on give as a gift. Nope. Okay. I don't know. But it can't be that expensive. I mean, at the most, like maybe $30, $35, something like that. There's a ton of really good people in it. Neil Gaiman is actually the narrator of it, which is pretty awesome because he's got an amazing voice. But he's got, a ton of really good people in it. And I think they're going forward to do more of it because, like I said, there's oh wow, they have a breakdown of the entire cast for all of the episodes. That's awesome. Hell yes, that's rad, because it's very long. It's 20 episodes, and they're all different stories, and they have different characters coming in and out of it. It's pretty cool. I don't know how much it is, but you can check it out. Highly recommend if you especially like audiobooks. Full cast, a ton of different voice actors in it, and it's extremely well done. It's got music and sound effects. It's really awesome, and it's just a good time to be had by all. But that's about it for this week's episode. I've gone too long. I rambled on quite a bit. I got a little off on a tangent there in a sandbox. But anyways, tune in next week with, I promise you, I will have watched Sweet Tooth at least half, if not all, so I can talk about it next week, about Jeff Lemire's creation coming to live action, and other things. I believe I have some other stuff to talk about Jeff Lemire's stuff as well, other than Sweet Tooth, and I will recommend some of his other books you can read too next week. But yeah, that's it for this week's episode. We've been talking about The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, soon to be a live action television program on the Netflix. Again, another Netflix thing. Last week had Netflix stuff. This has Netflix stuff in it. Next week, The Sweet Tooth is going to have Netflix stuff in it. But I promise you, the last 2 weeks will be Amazon stuff. And I'll talk a little bit about that next week. Or then the week after next and the week after that. When I talk about Robert Kirkman and Brian K. Vaughan. For the folks who have not listened, go back and listen to last week's episode when I talked about the Netflix Miller World stuff. And there's some updates on that, but I won't go into on that. But anyways, that's it for this week's episode of The Awesome with Cody. As usual, I've been your host, Cody, and like I always say at the end of these, let's be awesome.